Hi, everybody. George Chamberlin here, executive editor at the Daily Transcript. Just finished up another roundtable. We've been real busy lately. This one dealing with financial issues. And joining me to talk about this is Tom Frost. He is the head for the Frost firm here in San Diego, an attorney litigation firm. Tom, thanks for coming in and sponsoring the roundtable.
Thank you.
Talk about a little bit of, we'll get into more detail, but talk a little bit about the kind of work that you do.
Well, for many years, I've practiced in the securities industry. A lot of the cases that we handle are FINRA arbitrations. Any cases between customers of broker-dealers or between registered representatives and their employer broker-dealers are subject to mandatory arbitration with FINRA. So a lot of the cases we handle are FINRA arbitrations relating to securities issues. We also handle a great deal of sophisticated, complex business litigation that deals with securities issues outside of the financial services industry, just investments.
You mentioned FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, sort of a self-regulating entity for the financial industry. There are different types of activities going on right now, and the hot buttons that you see all the time change from almost year to year, generation to generation. What are some of the top of mind items that you're seeing now at your firm?
I think we're kind of coming off of a wave of TIC investments.
Explain that.
Tenant-in-common investments were sold in mass in the last 5 years or so, and those were there were a great number of TIC investments sold to investors through broker dealers by registered representatives. And those, and a lot of those broker dealers are now defunct or bankrupt, and that was so I would say there's a large volume of litigation and TIC investments for a period of time. These days, I'm seeing a lot of private placements being sold to investors as alternatives to the market. Some broker dealers permit their registered reps to sell private placements, but only approved ones. But sometimes those reps are tempted to sell unapproved private placements. And
would that include things like private REITs and things like that?
That would include private REITs, yes, but more what I'm seeing are even Ponzi schemes or deals that are purported to be backed by real estate in some fashion, or secured by real estate or secured by policies of insurance, for example. Complex products that people don't quite understand. They're being sold as an alternative to the market, and when their money's gone, they have no one to look to. And so they have to look to the rep that sold them the product, and if the rep wasn't supervised properly, then to the broker-dealer that failed to supervise the rep.
One of the things that I think has probably sparked business for a firm like yours is the current economic situation, the low interest rate environment, and many people who are relying on income from their investments to help in their retirement. And now they find themselves in a very difficult situation, and they're susceptible to people offering them products that promise high rates of return. And again, we'll go back to the annuity concept. There are other things like that. And ultimately, they find out, wow, this was not what I was sold. I would assume that probably generates a fair amount of activity for your firm.
Absolutely. That is a very common sales pitch to seniors in particular. Look, we have if your principal investment objective is safety of principal with income, you're a retiree, I have the ideal product. Here it is. And then it turns out it's a high commission product. If it was in the annuity context, several years ago, it was always a variable annuity typically that came with an 8% commission, perfectly acceptable and approved by the firm to sell to certain customers. Difficult to show that it's unsuitable. They're very complex instruments. Convincing panels that it's an unsuitable product presents hurdles. But it's always about safety and higher returns. You don't want a CD, sir. You know you don't want a CD. You want something a little that's going to perform I have something that's actually it's going to give you 12%, and it's guaranteed.
Wow.
And we both know that's an impossibility.
12% in a 1% world, there's something wrong there, right?
Something wrong.
You mentioned also in the roundtable something called affinity fraud, which I think is unfortunately probably one of the most vile forms of fraud out there. Explain what that is and what some of the things you're seeing.
Okay. What I've seen, what affinity fraud really refers to fraudsters or Ponzi schemers or just financial fraud committed against and targeted to a particular segment of the population. I've experienced mostly affinity fraud towards the wealthy Mexican population in San Diego or affinity fraud in religious circles.
Yeah.
People commonly will join a church. A fraudster will join a church, get to know its congregants, and then demonstrate a flashy lifestyle, convince all the congregants that he has the answers to their financial questions, and eventually prey upon those people within the church and ask them to go out and reach to other like-minded religious people, and on, and it becomes a network of investors for fraudsters to defraud.
Yeah.
And there was a terrible Ponzi scheme that was publicized in San Diego several years back that involved many Mexicans in San Diego and Nevada that related to deeds of trust. We talked a little bit about that, but selling people the idea that they were buying real estate because they had a partial deed of trust, but really, in fact, they weren't in the chain of title. And they just trusted people. And sometimes culturally,
that's right.
You do trust people more on a handshake. That's why affinity fraud works for fraudsters.
What's the best line of defense on something like that, Tom?
I think the best line of defense is to always, when you're going to park your money with someone who's offering you a great investment opportunity, talk to your lawyer. Talk to your lawyer ahead of time. Ask him if the presentation of the investment looks legitimate, if it comports with something that seems above board, or if it's something that looks fishy. And we can see usually right away and help you. And don't wait until later to spend your money on an attorney.
That's phenomenal advice. That really makes so much sense, but people just are begrudge to do that. They will fight you on that, but it would probably be the smartest thing somebody could do is to have a professional look at the contract, look at the policies before you sign on the line and hand over that big check, because once you do, you're probably in big trouble. Very quick. One other thing you brought up was that the area of estates where you wind up having family members get into these hellacious disputes and really ruin a relationship for the rest of their lives. That's got to be one of the more difficult things you wind up having to deal with.
Yeah, it absolutely is. A family member finally making and taking that decision to sue another is a very difficult decision to make, and it results in a lot of family strife. And hopefully, once started, families can see a way to mediate or resolve a case right at the outset rather than litigating onward. But I think the best way to protect against these types of things is to really look at your estate planning documents carefully and spend the money, spend the time with qualified estate planning counsel to get a document that comports with your wishes, and specifically with respect to the surviving spouse's willingness to control the assets, the power of the surviving spouse to distribute assets after the death of the first settler. Those things need to be concrete. And if the surviving spouse doesn't want to be involved in a fight between the siblings, then hire private fiduciaries.
Sure. You know, it's amazing. It would just mean talking about issues, having those family meetings, getting it all out on the table, making designations before the death occurs, the first or second. It's going to solve a lot of these problems, but people have a hard time dealing with their own mortality, and that's where it gets kind
That's exactly right, and it's hard to part with the money up front for whatever reason. People don't want to pay professionals up front, but they pay a lot less if they do.
Boy, and how. Tom, thanks for coming in.
Thank you
Enjoyed
very
talking with you, and thanks for sponsoring the roundtable.
Thank you very much, George.
You bet.
All right.